4 o'clock and it's time for our webinar. Welcome to our live webinar. Let's stop packaging and think out of the package. We're happy to welcome you and we will introduce ourselves shortly. So I'm Lara Eding and I'm working in the area of product and marketing management, and we'll guide you through the live demo today with my colleague Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm responsible for products and innovations at RayNet. I'm speaker at packaging conferences and events and active contributor to the open source community.
Okay, thanks Martin. So let's take a quick look on the agenda for today. We prepared some cool points and we'll present you some insights and some feeling of the power of RayPack Studio in between with some use cases and challenges in the area of software packaging. And of course, we will do a live demo to present you the product, RayPack Studio. And afterwards, we have a Q&A session, so all participants are on mute during the live webinar. But if you have questions, feel free to take your questions in the chat room, so we will answer this later. And we prepared some, I would say, pre-release, some news in the area of packaging. And so let's start with the power of RayPack Studio. So many different stakeholders, for example, the software packager, chief security officer, or chief financial officer, agree that the packaging solution must be simple, secure, and cost-saving. And in today's and tomorrow's world, the focus is more and more on the important factors of standardization, automation, and ensuring the delivery of functional and secure software packages. And with this statement and the power of RayPack Studio, we will provide the answers and solutions to the biggest challenges in your daily business. Unplanned packaging efforts and a parallel focus on quality and security are not unknown. So everybody from us knows the challenges. There's a security gap or a new update that must be packaged and provided ad hoc. The whole packaging process starts from the beginning, of course, and the strong security requirements add a lot of effort, but of course, it's very important to solve this. And at the same time, you detect unexpected problems that you didn't plan or have in your mind before. For example, the new application is not compatible on the operating system or creates conflicts with other software, typical in case of migration planning. And all the challenges must be delivered with speed and functionality, which creates enormous pressure and is prone to issues. And with this power of RayPack Studio, we have the solution and the answers to the most common use cases.
Okay, so I'm going to take over now and going back now to the first questions that we posed. So stop packaging. Well, actually, contrary to what the title says, we don't want you to stop packaging. It's just too important. The packaging today is a means of getting you the tools required to have your software up to date, to make sure that you close your security gaps as soon as possible, to make sure that your users get the software they are familiar with, to make sure that your software is patched, that features are delivered as soon as possible, and all of this in kind of manageable way so that you control both the installation, uninstall, repair, but also the stuff like user profiles. So now it's important. It's a core activity, but at the same time, it does not mean it has to be complex. Now, complex means in the past, it used to be difficult with tons of scripting, different technologies. And to be honest, on Windows, packaging environment, packaging ecosystem has been to some degree a nightmare. A lot of different stuff happening, and although there were movements and tries to standardize things, you can basically name everyone up here a lot of different technologies. How you deploy your software today on Windows. Definitely one of the most important, one of the most widely used is the MSI, the Windows installer, all good one, pretty well documented and known by many people. Microsoft has been recently trying to push also the MSIX direction. So there are some process of and counts of moving into either of them. Like I said, so MSI, well known, it serves pretty every single type of software. It can deliver, well, to be honest, pretty much everything, starting from a simple software with just a bunch of files to complex one with comms, drivers, and stuff like that. And at the same time, the MSIX is now being pushed from Microsoft to ensure that we have a secure deployment, that we have a clean deployment, so with clean install, clean uninstall, and repair and stuff like that. That it's secure and fast, that it uses the binary byte level difference, ensuring that it's just upgraded quickly and getting only the bits that are important and required for the update. So a lot of interesting stuff, and also directed towards enterprise usage, something which AppX kind of didn't quite deliver. Things like modification packages or shimming with PSF Toolkit are the things that are making the difference. Now, the adoption, this might be something which didn't go so good. I mean, at least until now. With some good effort, you can reach maybe 70% around of packages which can currently work in MSIX environment. But certainly there will be still software which will probably never run because of different limitations, because of the way MSIX has been designed from ground up. So there are a bunch of others, but there has been also a movement from community to kind of close the gap. So like, even though there are tons of different ways of deploying, just MSIX and MSIX being two of them, but not forgetting things like AppV, FinUp, just file copy, maybe PowerShell, NuGet. How about to deliver some constant interface, which regardless of what kind of setup, what kind of different deployment technique you have in the background, what kind of deployment system are you using, a toolkit which would standardize them all, which would provide this consistent interface on all of them. The PSADT, so PowerShell AppDeployment Toolkit, is one of them, and it's pretty widely used. It's free. It's well documented. Everyone has access to source code. So there has been some good adoption on that, and even in our internal RayNet projects, we see many projects going into that direction, trying to minimize number of repackaged apps and going more into the PSADT direction. But even that might be, say, too complex. Sometimes what you really need is just a simple app getting deployed without really fancy stuff, without really fancy configuration, just bare bones, without any complexity. And for that, we also have a use case, which is a set of pre-configured software, which you just simply configure, but more like from the business perspective. Like, I need a software A with option B and C, and you don't think about, is it an MSI format, MSIX, or PSADT? You just get it in some standard way. And that will be one of our cases, which I'm going through during our live demo. Finally, sometimes the choice of the technology, whether you use or not MSIX, might be even driven by your limitations, by the software you are using, by software you are trying to move into the new container format. And obviously, in order to save time, it makes sense to be as proactive as possible, to plan the migrations accordingly. And if you know that your software won't run or will have troubles in MSIX, just stop at that point. Don't try to waste too much time. And for that, we also have tooling, which I'm going to present, showing how to get that answer in as so to say, as soon as possible. Now, having said that, these 4 core areas will be actually the core of content what I'm going to present today. And I'm going to actually use the same software for all of them, just to show you that the product from us, RayPack Studio, is not really, I would say, opinionated. We don't really push you into any of these directions. We give you the right tools to work with them, but whether you are ready today to go to MSIX, or maybe you want to stay with the older one to MSI, for example, to have a stable portfolio with the tools and knowledge you have. We don't force you in any direction, but we ensure that when you are ready for that switch, going from MSI to MSIX, that you will get the familiar tool with familiar functions, with familiar UI. And that would be an introduction to what we are going to show live. So let me now go to my machine with the recent version of RayPack installed. And like I said, I need something to work with. The first, what I was talking about was the repackaging. In our internal projects, repackaging is kind of considered too time-consuming. I mean, you can do it once or two, but imagine a software which is requiring repackaging every single week or maybe day because of some different security policies, specifically for web browsers, for email clients, for maybe some runtimes. So repackaging all and over can be problematic. It can lead to errors, it can lead to a waste of time doing all the same stuff, but still not being able to really reproduce that because every single repackaging is at the end a different software which just through some usage of upgrade codes and stuff, depending on the technology, again, might be upgradable. But still, this is just the core what we do today. If you go to MSIX, you need to repackage anyway. So because of that, it's also so important in RayPack Studio. And we will start with just a really quick, without bells and whistles, conversion, which is just going to provide some basis for me to work with. And the package I'm going to use for the webinar is going to be KeyPass, so a password manager. It's an exe format, so a good candidate for repackaging. And I'm going to use one of the modules of RayPack. There are plenty of different choices how can you proceed with that. My personal goal is to make it as fast as possible without too much clicking around, without too much UI. So let me go the Packbot way. RayPack is clever enough and supports you in many different smaller steps. For example, in this case, it already suggested to me the command line, which I can use to install the product silently. So it's pretty cool. I don't have to Google around and find it out. There are different formats you can target, but I'm going to stick to our internal one for some good reason, which I'm going to explain soon. Again, I just want to make it really fast and quick without too much analysis what's currently happening in the background. And when it's done, I guess we can now start. So it's going to use a virtual machine, and well, let's run it. So what's going to happen is it's going to be still a repackaging. So 2 snapshots are going to be taken. A virtual machine is going to be automatically started. In this case, it's a workstation from VMware, but you have a choice of some different stuff. You can use vSphere, you can use Hyper-V. And essentially speaking, I don't have now anything to do. The way I configured it on the default is just do the repackaging, don't ask me for anything, don't ask me about any settings, do the second snapshot and grab the output. So the result of the work, we can maybe show them side by side so that we see what's happening. The result of the work is going to be a project which just contains all the files and registries and shortcuts and all the functionalities which my KeyPass would otherwise install. Again, no interaction, so I could also use that for bulk conversion, for example, by saying, hey, here's my folder of 200 apps, and I'm going to convert them all at once to MSI format. It's pretty doable. So also in that case, the ability of RayPack to determine silent command line switches is pretty interesting because essentially speaking, it again strips this complete configuration out of the equation, and for most of apps, you just need to click next, and then you are done. So it's going to take a few more seconds, and like I said, I didn't select the MSI as a target for a framework, and this is again to back up the strategy. We don't force you into any particular format. You can go and stay neutral using our internal RayNet project, and out of that project you can create MSI files, MSIX files, even attach images, AppV and other, without having to think about before doing the repackaging. So the neutral format means you are free to convert to any particular one as you go. So it's almost done. Now the second snapshot in progress. And after the second snapshot, my files will be pulled and I will have my project now be able to work on it. So just give it a second and we can continue the live demo.
And in the meantime, you can take a new coffee, yeah?
Yeah. If you have questions, don't hesitate, ask in our chat. We'll collect them all and try to answer them at the end of the presentation. Lara is monitoring the chat. And if there is any question which is like better maybe to answer immediately, just let me know. We are pretty flexible. So I can see that the project is done. The machine is going to be shut down, and that was it. Pretty much without bells and whistles, the keypads has been repackaged, and we can now have a look. What do we have? So let's try to open it. That was the project here. Again, I didn't cover a lot of different complexities and stuff in the background, like exclusion lists, like trying to figure out what actually belongs to my installer or not. But I can assure you that RayPack already did some good work, putting everything which is needed into the content of my package and making sure that files and registries and all other stuff which do not belong there are excluded. One of the interesting features of RayPack, which I really love, is its ability to scan for background installers. This was not the case in keypads, but imagine you are repackaging, for example, Adobe Reader, which has some hidden MSI running in the background. So RayPack is clever enough to determine, hey, you are repackaging MSI, which is not really what you are supposed or expected to do. But in that case, if that happens, we are allowing you to, for example, create a transform instead of the repackaging. So it's pretty cool. And essentially, it means you can use repackaging, not to repackage, but to transform your original Windows installer and not having to repackage it again. So pretty interesting. Saying a word about the RayPack UI, we're going to see some different approaches, the MSI and MSIX and PSADT soon. Just look how similar are they. It means that once you are proficient with, for example, MSI packaging with RayPack, switching to MSIX or to PSADT is going to be much easier. The learning curve is not really steep in that case, because essentially speaking, you know all these concepts of having a single tool with different multi-purpose targets. So without going any further, let's say we are just happy with the content, seems anyway good, and we can now create a few target formats which we will be able to deploy. That could be, for example, the MSI, MSIX, and I think we can maybe first stick with two of them, and I'm going to show a couple of interesting bits about RayPack Studio. So actually, with just a few clicks, we created a fully functional Windows installer setup, which you can deploy using your favorite deployment tool. And next one would be for our next demo, the MSIX format. What I did in the background, I set up the signature, so it's digitally signed, but otherwise it was also pretty fast and smooth. So you can save that project, and if in the future, if you decide that you, for example, want to go the AppV way or maybe Citrix app layering, there's your project format, and you can convert to any target format from the RayNet project. All right, so that was kind of the classic approach, repackage. This piece of software, KeyPass, was pretty simple, not really demanding. There weren't too many options that I configured, although the product itself offers a lot. Some typical settings, which actually I skipped in that demo, was, for example, how to disable the auto updates. I skipped that just for the sake of clarity, but just bear in mind that in many cases, it might take slightly longer to actually repackage. And this is exactly why this hasn't been below so much.
Yeah, Martin, there's a question. Why are you using Server 2012 for the conversion?
It's just the machine which I had. Actually, it's a good point. So normally you should use the OS that you are kind of targeting. I just use what I had here. It's pretty fast. So there is really, literally no other reason other than just having a machine on my computer.
Yeah.
And obviously the MSI is platform agnostic. So what I did now with Keep Apps, it might not be the case for all apps, but for Keep Apps, certainly you can reuse that on different computers, different Windows without issues. So, but obviously repackaging for Windows 11 would mean that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to use a Windows 11 machine. Yeah, good point. All right, so let's try to open one of these. In case they were here in webinars. Oh, wrong path. Key paths. So I created the MSI and MSIX. Let's just try to visit one of them. And now our story from repackaging goes into the Windows installer. So we have a first-class support for Windows installer, meaning patches, transforms, and obviously the MSI database files. So with all of that, you can cover not only repackaging from existing non-MSI setups, but also tune, tailor the setups coming already in MSI format from the original vendor. So also, again, to stress out, the functionality and the UI is striking similar. So same set of features are there, and looking around is not really a big deal. We offer a concept, and we are going to cover that soon, of advanced and visual designing, and this is true and valid for MSI, for MSIX, and for PSADT, where you have a visual mode, so the one that you switch on the bottom of the screen, where just with your mouse and maybe slightly keyboard, you can configure pretty every single bit of your installer, like files and folders, registries, shortcuts. But if you have more experience or more specific needs, including also automation or some manual really fine-tuning, depending on your needs, you can always switch between visual and advanced designer. And advanced designer, depending on the target format, offers you, for example, in this case, direct access to tables or components or features, so all the Windows installer, so to say, terminology. And obviously, changing anything here would directly be represented in Visual Designer, and vice versa. Changing Visual Designer stuff would make a direct effect here. We, although the Advanced Designer is more like for IT pros and people having already some experience with the technology, even though we make it as smooth as possible by providing different wizards and highlightings, drop-downs, suggestions, IntelliSense, and stuff like that, just to make sure that you are not left alone, that even though direct access to tables is pretty demanding, but yet powerful, that it's still a positive experience. So also ensuring that the packages are simply not broken by just some accident change, but it's all like more manageable. So again, we are not opinionated. We don't force you in MSIX if you don't want to go. And even though MSIX has been already 2 or 3 years on the market, we still have some decent support on MSI, which is still constantly growing. So with every single version of RayPack, there is something new. One of the recent additions, for example, is a pretty cool condition editor, which offers access to many different features of MSI, including asking for state of installations, a component. But one of the newest additions here was access to predefined searches, like taking a look, do I have Adobe Reader installed? And if yes, maybe, and if no, maybe break my installation if it's some add-on. or IAS or Office. And the good thing is that I will, for example, take the checking of which build I'm currently running off. So for example, I could, with just a few clicks, make a condition that I should be running on Windows 11 in order to continue with my installation. So build 2020 000. And with the help of snippets and operators and wizards, it's pretty easy to come up with conditions which do not require any kind of scripting or programming, and RayPack does the heavy lifting. So if I now press the OK button, as you can see, the launch condition is there, but a distinctive feature of RayPack, it shows all the changes it did in order to ensure the launch condition is there, which is a great tool for learning and analyzing what's the impact of the operations and actions I'm doing. And for example, that heavy lifting are a bunch of stuff here in App Search or Property or Reglocate. So you don't have to be really an MSI expert. Again, the visual designer is enough, but the advanced designer gives you a complete overview and control on what RayPack is doing. From the MSI, if you start with MSI from vendor, you can still create different formats, including MSIX, the app attach. You can create patches and some other formats which RayPack supports. So again, depending on where you come from, there are some different paths and ways how to get to your goal. All right, so this has been now how it used to be before the MSIX introduction, classic repackaging or tuning your setups to get the MSI. Now let's go to the MSIX file which I created, and the MSIX should be in here. So again, it's the same concept. One of the new additions in RayPack 7.2 is the addition of the Advanced Designer for MSIX, which is again following the same formula. We let you edit everything which is required for daily business, for daily packaging from the UI with your mouse. Yet, if you want to have a full control, or if just selecting some text and making copy and paste is just more convenient to you, why not? We have the advanced view. So for example, if I go to the capabilities view, which describe what my package, what my MSIX package is doing or can do, you could click around and set up the options. But just for the sake of demo, I could also do the same for the designer here. And there is a capability, so let's just try to maybe enable something just to see contacts, and the contacts have been added here. And the same, I could maybe even make some change manually from the advanced designer by adding appointments, so something like that. And in this small example where I'm just really directly playing around with MSIX internals by changing its manifest, I can go back and see that my calendar has been now enabled. So this two-way binding that I was just showing in MSI Word is also having the same effect on MSIX packages. Now, like I said, starting from 2018, I guess, we have a first-class support for MSIX features. So with that in mind, you can create or convert your projects, which I just did, but you can also create projects from scratch and then just drag and drop some files and registries. And you can also open existing projects, for example, done in Microsoft Packaging Tools, and then edit them further in RayPack. We have support for shimming with PSF, so all the kind of fix-ups, redirections and stuff are there. We have support for modification packages, so kind of add-ons in MSIX world in which you define like the software which just adds a bunch of files or plugins to extend another software already in MSIX format. That's also doable with Pack Designer for MSIX. So we still continue to invest into that area. We actually go now in parallel, so making sure that we are covering the new trends, so MSIX packaging, but that we don't forget about existing, so to say, legacy approaches. So we're using the knowledge and vast amount of documentations and scripts and tools that you may have. We do not forget that the product is constantly being developed in two directions. Yet, if you decide at some point, I'm ready now for a switch, with RayPack, it's pretty simple. Okay, but even though that might be sometimes an overkill to go the full process of repackaging or conversion or opening even existing formats. And I was mentioning in the beginning that there are some different ways of doing that. One of them being PowerShell AppDeployment Toolkit, PSADT. And we had support for PSADT from one of the first versions of RayPack, so you could create your wrapper from with help of our wizard. But the problem was that the PSADT is flexible. It's a set of toolkits, libraries, and functions which provide you all the necessary building blocks to get your setup done. It provides your unified interface, but it does it for a reason, and that reason is customization. So it's not only about just starting your setup with parameter with command line switches, but also about like doing something after it. Maybe disabling your updates with registry hack, or maybe setting up some ini files. So let's just start the easy way. How can you go into PSADT? So again, format with constant interface, regardless of what's inside, MSI or non-MSI, and how can you create quickly a PSADT without too much configuration? So I'm going to go through the way of using the wrapper functionality, the new wizard format, and it happily accepts pretty everything which you can install on Windows. So for example, I can go back to my source and say, here is my, what was it? Getting webinars. So I could select, here's my keypads, and as in case of repackaging, there is going to be automatic command line waiting for me. So again, I don't have to find out in documentation. I could also go back and select another format. Again, literally every single format that you can install on Windows. Let's maybe take our MSI, which I just created. And in that case, there are just some slightly different options, but ultimately the goal is the same, that we create a wrapper which is capable of installing, repairing, and uninstalling my setup. In that case, these are the familiar MSI switches which can be used, but you can still customize them. So having said that, I don't have really that much to do any further, because once I go next and accept that I want to have my PSADT ready, it's going to be created. There is really nothing else. I could go also the Intune way on this wizard, but that's another story, and I'm going to cover that maybe later on. So let's just see what RayPack did. By processing, it's done. We can open the Explorer to see, and there would be a bunch of files, stuff around, and we can now open them with our pack wrapper. So this is a unique tool, and the uniqueness of that tool is you can use it to open any kind of valid PSADT format, and it's going to visualize its contents and also lets you to edit that without programming at all. So PSADT is naturally PowerShell, and in a vanilla approach, you have to know PowerShell, you have to script, you have to have some decent IDE to get what you need. But RayPack makes it super easy. So what I did is I just wrapped around the keypad. So here is my icon, name, version, and here are the installation steps of how to do things. Now, this has been created automatically by RayPack. So in case of the MSI installer, it pulls the right parameters like machine installation, like even some log file name, where to take the MSI from, and some other stuff. I could add some more steps, and for that we have a library. And in the library, you can do pretty much anything that is typically done. You can copy files, copy folders, you can start set up MSI or non-MSI. You can wrap maybe even some dependencies around before your main setup. You can work with registry, shortcuts, processes, and many, many more. Now, it's also really interesting, and also one of the recent additions. Since we support the actual PSADT, you can use any kind of function which the PSADT template defines for you. There are literally hundreds of them. For example, if I type the SCCM here, it shows me that like invocation of SCCM task is possible for me, and I could use it. So what RayPack is doing, by the way, instead of again programming, it shows you some really nice UI where you don't have to really think too much, like which options do I have, what can I select. Instead, it offers you drop downs, IntelliSense, helps, and any kind of point. So for example, here I could maybe do some software inventory and get some maybe help by hovering on that icon. Now, also something which is new in the 7.2 is support for pre and post installation in some new and interesting visual way. So like I can see I have now 2 steps to install my software, but I can also add something which happens before my installation or which happens after my installation. Also interesting thing is that, as in case of the MSI and MSIX, and again, contributing to the same story, we offer you a framework which has the same user experience, regardless of which format you export to. And in that case, we have an advanced view which shows the actual PowerShell content. And if you are a PowerShell lover, you can just simply go through there and edit the content and see what's changing in the visual designer. Or the other way around, change the visual stuff and observe what actions are executed on the script. So for example, let me scroll to that part, the interesting one. So the execution of the MSI and then some invocation of SCCM tasks. Let's just try to do some interesting stuff here. For example, we will now test with if some file exists on my computer. So maybe it's going to be some deterministic of how to execute our installation depending on whether the file is there or not. So just adding a file called check if item exists. It could be maybe a file. And again, without writing, I'm just going to select some program files, maybe 7-zip, and from here, 7-zip exe. So it's going to test whether 7-zip exe is existing on my machine. And let's save it to some variable like 7-zip. So all these changes, as I do, are dynamically represented in PSADT. So again, absolutely zero scripting approach, but still you can control. You can see what's the result, and also you can learn from that, like what do I do in PSADT or in PowerShell to get my job done. But like I said, there is a way to do it the other way around, using our tool as a kind of visualizing technique. So for example, taking and saying, all right, now I'm going to program something, which again is completely optional, but for many users it might be still super convenient. And we are going to check now if 7-zip is there, and maybe then we want to invoke our SCCM task. So I'm going to make some slight modification there and have it like that. So maybe it makes not that much sense in terms of like what I did, but the important thing is that I just did something in a script, and going back to the visual designer, my flow is completely represented. So you can use that to really open any kind of PSADT and see, okay, so this is what it's doing. And the clean separation of install, repair, and uninstall makes it even simpler. So you don't have to scroll around in this big around 300-liner file of PSADT, and instead it's all purely visually available for you. Also, a couple of additions that we did in a recent version were introduction of some more control on the interaction and reboot behavior. For example, changing your branding from here, or saying like, do you want to have PSADT support reboot for you and stuff. All of these are now configurable, so there are plenty of options. They are like kind of more advanced, but still come in handy in many cases. And again, it's double two-way approach, so you can also set them up if you are proficient with PSADT from the code and then see, okay, my checkbox is there. So it's pretty cool. You can open any kind of project, not only the one that I just opened from RayPack, and the migration path and learning curve is pretty easy, and allowing you to go straight into deployment with a PS1 approach. So that would be how you wrap the software, but also how you edit the software already wrapped or the one that I just did. Still, you may ask, all right, but even that might be too complex. So after all, what I just did, the wrapping, was to ensure that my setup is somewhere buried in PowerShell code, which conveniently in RayPack can be edited visually. But what about some simpler approach? What about just only to specify what I need, like I need my key pass, and then without all these struggles, without even thinking what's in the background, how about to get into my package being done? So for that, we have another use case. And again, I'm going to continue the same story, the key pass. We've just seen how to do that with the complete and classic repackaging. We've been also able to edit the MSI with Pack Designer. Now in the third step, I converted the MSI into PSADT format, so software wrapping. And right now, I'm going to go the package store way. The package store is a pre-configured set of software, ready to be used, ready to be configured. And let's have a look how easy is that and how much effort would it save in comparison to what I did before, even with usage of visual methods. So let's try to look it up. The key pass. So that's the software I want to customize. You can think of it as a kind of feed. So something which is managed by Raynet, where we make sure that the updates are there, new versions and new software. And KeyPaps version 2481, I guess this was the one I used, or maybe it was some different. In any case, I could switch to a different version if I need. So it's multi-version, not only the newest one in case you need. And the difference now is I started slightly from the other way around. Before that, I had my sources, and I had to answer, what do I do to get these sources into my deployment? Do I convert them, or do I wrap them, or are there any different maybe choices? In this case, I do not have my sources. I only know which software I wanted. So first of all, let's grab the sources I need. Well, you can maybe go to the website of KeyPass and get the sources from your FTP link. But why RayPack makes it even easier, it has a database which points to where the software is available. So with just one single click, I can make the automatic download, and now my KeyPass is there. Again, I didn't even have to think about, is it an MSI installer, or is it an exe-based setup, or maybe something different. I just know I need KeyPass, and the second thing I know are the options that I can use to configure it, so to say, more on business level. For almost every software, there is a set of standard options which you can configure. For example, removal of shortcuts on the desktop. It's a rather typical activity. So like giving access to the user so that they can decide what they want and what they don't want on the desktop. So we remove them. And also disabled the Add Remove Programs buttons. It's just to make sure that our deployment takes care of removing and not the user, which, by the way, might not even work because of the UIC access and stuff. Still, these two options are pretty frequently used, and I'm going to just select them. There are some more, up to 9 or 10 of them, which are like standard, and literally pretty every single software supports all or some of them at least. Now, there are also a lot of different apps in Package Store which offer some extra layer on top of that. That extra layer are business requirements and business settings which you may set up using some high-level configuration, again, without thinking, so how do I do that? Is it a registry? Is it some MSI or an environment variable? Instead of thinking about that, like say, what about disabling auto updates of keypads? You can repackage and you can have a look what is the result and where to switch it off. Is it registry or maybe some different setting? But in package store packages, we actually did that heavy lifting for you. We offer a high-level user interface where you just say, I don't want the updates of KeePass to happen. So that would be the first candidate to actually disable for literally every single enterprise deployment. And I just did that just knowing what I do, what I need, but without knowing where to do and how to do. So that's a pretty cool thing. And there are some different options. Again, from package to package, this might be different. There are some apps which offer some more choices. Some of them are having less. KeePass is an example where we do have a lot, and we did some great job here to find out what the users want to configure. And for the time being, let's just stick with the updates disabled. And having said that, we can now continue and see what's our output, what's our delivery. So the package is done. And if you are a good observer, you can see that we also use the PS80 as our format. So again, using the standard interface. And in that case, it was an exe format. It could be something different. But for the packages created with that tool, it doesn't matter, because the deployment interface is going to always be the same. Your IT administrator will never have to worry about which command line switches I need. It's always really the same. So to sum up the story, let's just review of what kind of heavy lifting has been done using RayPack by just opening the project. Now, I think this is a new one. Yes. So the deploy application PS1. And how much easier is to get into that state with already some configuration file and a registry key, going from the package store approach in comparison to do it all manually, either from MSI, MSIX, or PS80. And that's a really big and cool benefit of package store. Know what you do, but you don't have to really know how to do. And that really saves time and saves from errors. Right, so we've just covered the same package using some different use cases, from repackaging through MSI, MSIX, and finishing on software wrapping using PS80. Now, how about ensuring that we can go into, for example, MSIX or Windows 11 deployment? Like I mentioned in the beginning, we also have something for that, a component called RayQC Advanced, which in version 7.2 has been upgraded. So now it supports all Windows 10 editions and also Windows 11 as available today. And with that tool, it's super easy to test your apps against whether they will run in my target environment. The target environment can be your, for example, Windows 11, just generally speaking, Windows 11, or it could be your golden image, which you just also scanned with help of RayPack, which may also have some pre-configured apps, and you want to ensure that a new software that you bring into your ecosystem, that it doesn't collide with anything else. And the collision could be maybe a file system or some runtime which is pre-installed, or maybe a different app in a different version which is part of the base system, or maybe a different app which you have in your portfolio. So all of these type of checks are possible, and let's make a small demo with this new functionality of testing against, maybe let's do MSIX and Windows 11 combination. So we're going to make a quick test of the installer package. Just maybe make it slightly bigger. And like I said, the operating system, we could maybe also do the config checker, why not? And then MSIX, so that we have 3 tests included and executed concurrently. What are we going to test? I didn't import my library yet, so let's just pick it up from my KeePass. So again, the same package for the complete story, and we are going to test the KeePass against the complete portfolio. So pretty straightforward use case. The new KeePass has been just repackaged or packaged, and I want to know if there is any conflict in other apps or systems. So the MSI. The system, like I said, if you have a snapshot, golden image, or a template, you can select it out from here. Otherwise, and I'm going to stick with that, I'm going to select the new Windows 11 as my target. So at the end, I'm going to see whether my software runs on Windows 11 64-bit. We are going to test if it's MSIX capable. And once it's all done, the wizard will start. We'll test some various APIs, files, and registries, test whether there are some conflicts with what the operating system provides. And at the end, we see that there may be some issues. Depending on criticality, there may be different levels, red, yellow, and green. And as you can see, the conflicts actually reported to me that this software will not run. And the reason for that, if you drill down, is said to be that I already have another software which installs the same component, the same file, the same registry key into the same location. So that's also some valid indicator to me that I might not be able to actually get to install the software on that particular machine having that particular software keypads in that case. So that's certainly some place where I would have to take some extra attention and review. But other than that, if we skip out the collisions which were expected to show me an error, it seems that there is nothing more really problematic. So yeah, it uses some older .NET framework, but it's just a warning so that we are aware of that. It uses maybe some different API calls which might not be supported on Windows 11 shortly, but it's not a blocker. We consider it to be just a warning. So sum up of that story is, with a single run of our test, we've been able to see that the software shouldn't have any MSIX related incompatibility issues. It should run on my operating system, and well, that's the place where I would have to recheck. It probably won't run on the computers having, in that case, keypads already pre-installed. So that concludes the story, and now I could create a report in PDF format and maybe attach it to the ticketing system or send out to the packaging team so that they can also take a look and investigate which issues have been detected, how to fix them, and where the issues are expected. So there is a pretty comprehensive report which claims what to do and even where to find more information about help. Right, so this concludes the live part of the demo. Now let's go back to the slides for just a minute.
Yeah, so thanks, Martin. Looks very simple, and it is very simple. And I think the biggest benefit for our software packaging community is not only the unique PSADT functionality, but also the classical and modern approach in just one single solution. And yeah, now we have time for a Q&A session. We already have some questions, Martin. The first one is regarding MSIX. It is, how can we attach custom digital signature to sign MSIX file?
Yeah, so to some questions, I may actually go back and show it because my RayPack is still open. So we have a generic way of setting up a signature where you just define either your PFX or certificate with password, or maybe use hardware cryptography, and all of your packages are going to be automatically signed. We also do some nice trick, like due to the way MSIX is working, if you sign with your certificate, we can pull the subject string out of that and make sure that your identity is changed on the MSIX level. So that's some really nice feature for MSIX pros.
Okay, the next, do we have any option for Intune packaging?
What RayPack can do for Intune packaging, there is a wizard. Actually, I was going through a couple of steps, and there was a place where I diverted to some different branch. But from the wizard, you could actually deploy to Intune, and it's going to actually pack around all the PSADT files and compress them in Wintune 32 package, and provide you with that package that you can import into Intune console. Alternatively, from some of the editors, it's possible to even deploy to Intune. So we have a place in configuration for that, where you define your Intune credentials, app ID and stuff, and then you will be able to push directly from RayPack.
So another question is, the PowerShell files you open, do they have to be a specific format that RayPack understands?
No, they have to be, well, they have to be valid PowerShell in any case. They would have to also follow more or less what classic PS80 is doing. So all the sections for install, uninstall and stuff. Other than that, there are really no requirements. We don't have our own packaging format for PS80. We completely rely on PS1 files, which means you can use RayPack to open anything, anything which has been created manually or by any other tool or by RayPack, as long as it's simply a valid PS80 file.
Okay, thanks for that. There are no more technical questions, but one regarding the recorded session. So yes, this live webinar is recorded and we will provide you the recording afterwards via email. So you can take a look again into the session. Okay, no more questions, but I think we have 2 more slides and some announcements. And one of them is about our vision. It is the world's largest package store. So Martin presented already to you the integration of package store into RayPack. But yeah, there's already a web platform, so a classic package store like shopping system, and our vision will become reality because we will soon release the new package store concept with over 10,000 packages, and it's really cool. And you will benefit from the fact that you can always find the latest version in the store and download it with just one click. And you can configure it like Martin presented to you, just with simple clicks on checkboxes, and everything is documented well. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Can you go back to the slide, because it's very important. You can take a photo or can use the QR code, because you can subscribe to our newsletter to informed first of this news when we are released the package store. And there's also another reminder, with our Ray Academy, we offer many different trainings, of course, also in the area of packaging. And we have 2 trainings planned yet. It's the one is on-site in Paderborn in our beautiful new headquarters. And the second one is remote, so you can take part online. And if you are interested in basic software packaging trainings, please do not hesitate to contact us. Good. That's it from our side. So thanks for joining our live webinar. And if you have questions, or do you need some information, or please send us also your insights and your ideas in the area of packaging, and happy to stay in contact with you. Thank you.